I'm not usually the kind of guy to say, I told you so, but sometimes you just have to take a moment to point out when everything you've been yelling about for weeks actually happens. And when it does, and when it works, not just works, but changes the entire face of a football team. Yeah, that moment hits a little differently. Even more so when it happens on the other side of the planet, in front of nearly 75,000 fans in Dublin, Ireland. Steelers 24, Vikings 21. That was the final score at Croke Park. A fast-paced, surprisingly chippy game that ended with more questions answered than anyone expected when the team boarded the plane. Let's start right at the top. Jaylen Warren? Out. And not with much notice either. The guy finds out maybe an hour and a half before kickoff that he's sitting this one out to give his knee some time to recover heading into the bye week. Smart move by the coaching staff, especially considering the long-term value he brings. But that meant the team had to lean into Kenny Gainwell and Caleb Johnson. And what happened? Both stepped up. They didn't just fill in. They showed exactly why they're on this roster. Gainwell ran hard, ran smart, made quick decisions at the line. Johnson reminded people why he was drafted in the first place. It was one of those games where the guys getting unexpected chances didn't just hold their ground. They made a difference. Now here's where things get really interesting. For weeks, no months, we've been talking about the offensive line, or more specifically, how it's been underwhelming, underperforming, and outright failing to give this offense a chance. Too many blown assignments, too much pressure on the quarterback, too little time for plays to develop. Arthur Smith had clearly had enough. It wasn't just a tweak here or there. This time, it was a real adjustment. This time, he made a statement. Whether it was locking Darnell Washington to Broderick Jones' shoulder, throwing Spencer Anderson out there as a sixth lineman, or even mixing both in at the same time, he went big. Literally. You don't usually see coaches commit that hard to a six-man line, especially in the NFL. But this wasn't desperation. This was deliberate. You could feel the intent behind it. Get another blocker in there, stabilize the edge by the quarterback more than 2 seconds, and, maybe most importantly, build some confidence back into this group. And guess what? It worked. Not just kind of worked. It changed the entire flow of the game. Suddenly, play action was back on the table. They were able to run to the right side with actual success. The playbook wasn't a graveyard of unused calls anymore. Arthur Smith finally got to call plays the way he wanted to. Deep shots? Check. Crossing routes? Check. The whole field opened up, and with it, so did the offense. And let's not overlook the psychological impact of that. The defense didn't have to spend the entire afternoon gasping for air. That alone made a huge difference. Your edge rushers, who, let's be honest, looked gassed in previous weeks, were suddenly fresher, more dangerous, and completely in control. You got to see what happens when TJ Watt and Nick Herbig don't have to overextend themselves every single series. The burst off the line? Lethal. The pursuit angles? Sharper. The closing speed? Relentless. That kind of defensive pressure doesn't just happen because of talent. It happens when guys aren't on the field for 38 minutes a game. And it's not like the offensive line was just okay. No, they were buzzing after the game. Teammates were going out of their way to dap them up in the locker room. Usually you pass by the big guys on your way to the showers, give them a nod, maybe a slap on the shoulder if they played well. But this time there was real energy. Players making sure they stopped to say something. And that says a lot, especially considering the heat those linemen had taken in the first few weeks of the season. Public criticism, internal doubt, confidence hanging by a thread. But this game gave them something back. Spencer Anderson said it himself. This was the plan all week. Go heavy, run the ball, set the tone. He even joked about a goal line play that got stuffed, said maybe they should have run it his way instead. But beyond the smile, you could feel it. The pride, the belief that just maybe this team found a formula that works. Not forever, maybe, but for right now, yeah, they'll take it. Because right now, it's not about being flashy or pretty. It's about not letting your quarterback get hammered on every other dropback. It's about letting your young offensive linemen get some reps without having their confidence shredded. Nobody was complaining about needing extra help. Nobody was whining about having their number called 100 times from the press box. Spencer laughed about the fans chanting in the upper deck every time they heard, "Number 74 is eligible." That's the kind of moment that brings a team together. And look, nobody's pretending this is the long-term vision. You don't build a franchise offense around 6 offensive linemen. Eventually, you want to be able to spread it out, give your quarterback options, create mismatches. But for now, for this moment, in this game, against this opponent on this field, it was perfect. Perfect because it reminded this team what it feels like when things actually click. When the line gets pushed. When the run game finds rhythm. When the defense can breathe. When the plays you've been drawing up since April actually work the way you imagined they would. You can build on that. That's a foundation. Not the whole house, but a solid, unshakable base to start from. And I can't move on without talking about the atmosphere in Dublin. Crow Park was alive. It didn't matter that most of the crowd probably didn't know the Steelers' offensive line depth chart. They responded to the energy. They got loud. They felt the pace. Sure, some of the more niche Steelers traditions didn't hit quite the same. First down calls, third down chants, even Renegade didn't get the usual blast of noise. But that didn't take away from what was happening on the field. If anything, it added to it. There was something raw about it. A little chaotic, a little unfamiliar, but entirely electric. And speaking of the crowd, it was impossible to ignore the way the Irish fans responded when they heard something that spoke directly to them. Like when the stadium blasted "Zombie" by the Cranberries. That wasn't just a song. That was a moment. You could hear the voices rising, the passion spilling out of every corner of the stadium. That was Ireland. That was authenticity. And it stood in contrast to a lot of the rest of the presentation, which, if we're being honest, felt like Pittsburgh trying a little too hard to be Pittsburgh on foreign soil. Maybe next time, let the local flavor shine a little more. But that's a different conversation. For now, the story is what happened on the field. A beat-up offensive line found a way to take control. A banged-up backfield didn't miss a step. A quarterback, whether it was Kenny or Caleb, had time to make reads and take shots. A defense didn't have to carry the entire load. It might not be the way they drew it up in the offseason, but it worked. And after the first few weeks of this season, that's more than enough. And there's something else you could feel coming off this team after that win. Not just relief, not just excitement, but actual belief. The kind that's been missing, the kind that only shows up when the guys in the locker room start to realize that their effort, their preparation, their sweat and tape and bruises can translate into something tangible. That belief doesn't come from a coach giving a speech. It doesn't come from fans yelling into the void or media pressure building from the outside. It comes from within, from a team that finally saw what it's like when things work the way they're supposed to. And now that seed's been planted, there's no putting it back in the ground. You saw in the way Kenny Gainwell ran. He didn't look like a backup. He looked like a guy who'd been waiting for the moment to prove himself again, to remind people that he's more than just a second option. His vision was sharp, his cuts were confident, and most of all, he trusted the blocking in front of him. That trust doesn't just happen overnight. It has to be earned, rep by rep, drive by drive. Caleb Johnson brought the same edge. He didn't play like someone getting emergency reps. He played like someone trying to take someone's job. And maybe that's what the Steelers needed. That internal push, that next man up mentality, finally producing more than just bodies on the field. It brought results. And speaking of results, let's talk about Aaron Rodgers for a minute. No, not that Aaron Rodgers, not the guy from New York. We're talking about the Steelers' own rookie with the same name, who got his first real taste of extended playing time under the bright lights and a foreign sky. Was he perfect? Of course not. There were moments where you could see the nerves, where the ball came out just a little too soon, where he didn't fully recognize how much time the line had bought him. But that's part of the growth. That's part of the process. What matters is that he looked like he belonged. The stage wasn't too big. The pressure didn't crush him. And if anything, the mistakes were the kind that are easily correctable. Timing, rhythm, anticipation. Those things come with reps, and now he's got a few under his belt in a high-stakes environment. But if there's one thing that can't be coached, can't be taught, and can't be rushed, it's resilience. And this team showed a ton of it. From a first whistle to the last snap, they didn't fold when things got tight. Even when the Vikings made their late push, even when the crowd started to shift and the energy in the stadium got tense, they held. That's not something you can fake. It's a product of weeks and weeks of struggling together, taking criticism together, and still showing up on Sunday with the mindset to fight through it. Every team talks about culture, but games like this are where that culture gets tested. And the Steelers passed that test in Dublin. Now let's circle back to Spencer Anderson, because the guy deserves more credit than he's getting. Playing as a sixth offensive lineman is not glamorous. It's not the kind of role that gets you highlights on Sunday night or mentions on national shows. But what he brought was stability. He gave the offense a base to build from. He wasn't perfect, and he doesn't need to be, not in that role. He just needs to get to his spot, win his block, and let the play develop. He did that over and over again. That's why guys like Gainwell were able to hit the edge. That's why Rodgers had the time to go through his reads. It's not flashy. It's not fun. But it's football. And he played it well. You could tell, even in the way he talked after the game, that he understood exactly what this week meant. He wasn't out there asking for praise or calling attention to himself. He talked about being ready when his number was called, about how it had been emphasized all week in practice. Run the ball, control the edge, dominate the line. And when you watch the tape, it's obvious he internalized that message. He knew the assignment. He executed it, and it made all the difference. Now, don't get it twisted. This wasn't some magical, perfect game where everything suddenly fell into place forever. There were still mistakes. There were still missed assignments, drops, and bad reads. That's going to happen. But what made this performance matter wasn't that it was flawless. It was that it was functional. It was that it showed progress. And progress, in this league, is gold. Especially when you're building something. Especially when you've spent the first few weeks of the season trying to figure out who you are and what actually works. They found something in Ireland. Something real. And part of that reality was the joy, the raw, unfiltered joy you could see on the players' faces. Not just because they won. Not just because they flew halfway across the world and left with a victory. But because they felt it. They felt what it's like to finally put all the pieces together, even just for one game. That kind of feeling, that can carry you. That can fuel a team heading into a bye week. That can change how you practice, how you prepare, how you approach the next challenge. Because it's no longer theoretical. It's no longer something you talk about in meetings or watch on someone else's highlight reel. It's something you've done, something you've lived. But before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to Steelers Nation Central and hit the like button on this video. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And don't forget to share your thoughts on the news in the comments below. Breaking news is shaking the NFL landscape. Sources whisper that the Pittsburgh Steelers are on the verge of signing wide receiver HIGGINS in what insiders are calling a monster deal. While the organization has remained tight-lipped, the buzz around Heinz Field is impossible to ignore. If true, this move could signal a dramatic shift in the Steelers' offensive strategy, pairing HIGGINS with rising star Deontay DJ Pickens to form a wide receiver duo that opponents might soon fear as much as the league's most potent tandems. Fans and analysts alike are already speculating about what this pairing could mean. HIGGINS, known for his size, speed, and ability to make contested catches, brings a skill set that complements Pickens' route-running precision and explosive playmaking. The combination promises not just a dynamic passing attack, but also the kind of chemistry that can transform a quarterback's confidence and open up the entire field. Pittsburgh has long been searching for a legitimate number one receiver to pair with Pickens, and the whispers suggest they might finally have found their solution. Social media has erupted with reactions, ranging from ecstatic Steelers fans envisioning highlight reel touchdowns to cautious analysts warning about the salary cap implications. The rumored contract, described by insiders as eye-popping, would make HIGGINS one of the highest-paid receivers in franchise history and would underscore the Steelers' intent to be aggressive in building a championship-caliber roster. Meanwhile, whispers from the locker room suggest excitement is palpable. Pickens is said to be energized by the prospect of teaming up with a receiver of HIGGINS' caliber, hinting at the chemistry that could ignite a new era for Pittsburgh's passing game. For opposing defenses, the potential nightmare scenario is clear. Two elite receivers capable of stretching the field vertically and creating mismatches at every level. Although nothing has been officially announced, The rumor alone is enough to fuel speculation about how the Steelers might reshape their offense. Could Higgins and Pickens become the league's next iconic wideout duo? If the chatter proves true, fans may be witnessing the birth of a partnership that could dominate headlines and stat sheets for years to come. The NFL offseason just got a lot more interesting, and Pittsburgh appears to be at the center of the storm. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Pittsburgh Steelers, make sure to subscribe to Steelers Nation Central and give this video a like. We always look forward to hearing your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.